What was it like sitting in the box while that penalty was being killed? And obviously, you want to thank the guys after I saw it.
Long, really long, really long. Miserable. I hated every second of it.
You've heard of the CarCast? Well, meet the WalkCast. Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast, presented by the GMC Sierra Elevation. Elliotte Friedman, on his way back to the hotel from the American Airlines Center, where Connor McDavid almost ended it in the first overtime and then did in the second overtime. Edmonton draws first blood in this best of 7 against the Dallas Stars. 3-2 is the final score. And geez, I don't even know where to point to begin to tell the story of this game, Elliotte. This one was up and down and around and over and out the door and around the block. Where do you begin with this one? What a great game.
Fantastic game and a great atmosphere. It was the building in Dallas was tremendous. It was really a great night of just watching hockey. I guess you got to start with McDavid, right? Aaron Sorkin couldn't have written a better ending than this one. McDavid having the first overtime he did, getting the double minor for high sticking, having the one chance that. Like I said on the air, Jeff, there isn't anyone on God's green earth who didn't think he wasn't going to score there. Everybody thought he was going to score, and Ottinger made a hell of a play, but so did Tanev. I think it's like I'm just still watching the highlight, and it's been almost an hour since that play happened. I still can't believe he didn't score. Yeah, and then of course he finds a way to score the overtime winner on a great play by Evan Bouchard. So, I mean, it was really an incredible night. The Tanev-Lindell pair gave up 2 goals at even strength in the first 13 games of the playoffs, and McDavid and the Oilers got them 3 times tonight. And I don't think it's fair to say they stole the game. I think they were the better team for most of the game, and again, they grinded one out. But that's a great win for the Oilers.
It really is. Now, sticking with McDavid, was there not a part of you, and I know it was towards the end of Connor McDavid's shift, but when Elias Lindholm caught him on that breakaway, did part of you say, what's going on? Is that a Fox 40? Is that the call in the background there, Elliotte?
When Elias Lindholm
When Elias Lindholm caught him on that breakaway, did part of you say, uh-oh, what's up with McDavid?
You know what, Jeff? There's the old line, nobody's 100% at this point in the playoffs. But yes, I think Vancouver defended him really well. Really well. The Canucks deserve a lot of credit for the game plan that they put together. And I'm sure Dallas is copying some of that. But I think it's fair to ask if there is something a little bit deeper here. Now, McDavid had been on the ice for a minute before that happened, but we're so used to him being superhuman, Jeff, that while we would accept that about most players, we don't accept that about Connor McDavid. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of people wondering if something is going on here, but it's not like he's going to make excuses about it. And if we ask him, he's going to give us that McDavid glare that can literally melt skin off your body.
Yes. A couple of things here. The goaltending. Stuart Skinner stops Dadonov on the breakaway in the first period. Ottinger stops Warren Foegele on the breakaway in the first period. It's 0-0 after the first period. And the thing about this game, like the goalies were both really good, but also the one thing about Edmonton that I was really impressed by is how much they pushed it. Like they're on the road, and they really push. Draisaitl scores, Hyman scores. I know Seguin comes back to tie this thing. He scores a pair of goals, but right after Tyler Seguin scores that goal that makes it 2-2, what happens? Dylan Holloway, breakaway, speed, Oilers pressing, Oilers pushing, and they were, Elliotte, the entire game. Like, I don't want to take anything away from Dallas. Like, that's an excellent team. I was just super impressed with Edmonton. After going 7 games with the Vancouver Canucks, it feels like the Game 7 just wrapped up about 10 minutes ago, and there were the Oilers pushing all game long.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Dallas was the rested team. And I didn't even think they were dopey. Like sometimes teams get off for a week and they look dopey. I don't think that was the case. I think Edmonton just wrestled this one away from them for a good chunk. Now, do you buy my theory that Ottinger knew the Holloway move on his breakaway attempt?
Yeah, I saw you based on what happened previous. I believe that goaltenders have a breakaway and shootout book. At least goaltending instructors do, and goalie coaches do, have a breakaway book and a shootout book on everybody in the NHL. I really do. So I believe that theory. I think every goalie knows everyone else's tendencies. I think that's your job as an NHL goaltender. I know the goalie coaches are very specific about it too.
Yeah, and so I thought that one there. But to me, the heroes of the night were Edmonton's penalty killers. You know, the penalties were 5-1, the 4-minute kill in overtime. You know, the whole building thought Robertson scored on that one that hit the post. It was like the penalty killers did an incredible job. Those must have seemed like the longest 4 minutes of McDavid's life. But, you know, like there were no passengers for Edmonton in this one. No passengers at all. That was a full team win. And, you know, again, Darnell Nurse in the morning was asked about 2022, and he talked about how they really didn't understand what they were getting into when they reached the Western Final against Colorado. He said it was over basically before it started. They never knew what hit them, and we're different now. And they're showing that. Like, the Oilers are winning games in these playoffs that you don't think of typical Oilers hockey. You think of typical Oilers hockey as run and gun, beautiful goals, McDavid and Draisaitl scoring to get them out of any trouble. And in this series and last series, they're grinding. You know, they're not getting a ton of different people scoring, but at the very least, they're battling everyone to a standstill. And, you know, that's what you do in the playoffs. This team has come a long way in a very short time, and they grind out victories more consistently than they did. Now, that all of that said, this series is far from over. I have a theory on Hintz. I think he's a game or two away. I think Dallas was kind of thinking if they won game one, you could rest him until game three. If you remember when Colorado won the Cup, you know, Kadri, and I think it's a hand thing for Hintz. I don't know exactly what, like a hand-wrist thing. You remember Kadri got hurt and broke his thumb or whatever he did. Like, they kept him out, and they brought him back when they thought they were in trouble in the final. But because yes,
and he scored.
Because they dominated Edmonton, they didn't have to rush, and they could hold on for a little bit in the final. I think it was like 17 days before Kadri came back. Now, I don't know what Hintz's injury is, so I don't know how it compares. But one of the things I remember Colorado talking about them was the good position they were in. They could buy time. So, you know, DeBoer says Hintz is close. He said hopefully game two. Now that they've lost game one, I wonder if Dallas is going to say, all right, Rupe time.
Wouldn't surprise me at all to bring their number one center back. You know, I probably should have asked you this off the start of our conversation, but, you know, being a bad host and all. How is Dallas? Like, give us a scene set here. Like, set up like what this game meant, what the vibe is, the hockey team in the city, the atmosphere, all of it. Stick to the thermometer in Dallas right now for us.
Well, it's a great time for Dallas sports. The Mavericks are in the Western Conference Final of the NBA, and so it was interesting on Thursday. So I took an early flight from Toronto, 8:40 a.m., landing at I think we landed at 11:10 local, and we got in. And in the afternoon, it was like a monsoon here, and a whole bunch of people who were flying in, they got rerouted to like Houston or Austin because there were some big storms. So it was a tough travel day for some people. We were out for dinner on Wednesday night, and they were watching in the restaurant. They were watching the Mavericks game, which they won, and like people were yelling, "Mavericks tonight, Stars tomorrow. Mavericks tonight, Stars tomorrow." Like they are in a sports frenzy here right now, and the building tonight was fantastic. I mean, there were a few Oilers jerseys there. I saw probably about 10, but I saw a Patrick Sharp jersey tonight.
Nice.
I saw a Joe Nieuwendyk.
Ooh,
I
nice.
saw a Medano. But everyone here wears jerseys, and it was electric in that building. It was. It's going to be 36 on Saturday, Jeff. Now, we have a 15-minute walk from the hotel to the rink. It's a nice little walk. I did it today. It was like 28 in my suit, and I was okay.
Don't do that
People
again.
were saying to me, there is no way you are walking on
it.
Saturday. And you know what I'm going to do, Jeff? You know I'm going to walk it.
Don't, man. You're going to be dripping. You're going to get to the rink, they're going to get you onto the set with a soup spoon. You're going to be just leaking.
By the way, that will only be the second stupidest thing I do on this trip if I'm lucky. How about this game one? I didn't even notice my suit was blue and the tie was orange until I put it on. And BX is like, in our rehearsal, which is 90 minutes before we're on air, BX is like, you can't wear that. He said even the Oilers wouldn't wear suits looking like that into the game tonight. So to balance it, I have a Dallas Stars pen. I use my Dallas Stars pen to make notes to prove that I am purely unbiased.
This is what happens when you don't listen to Deb Berman.
Stop did it.
Freestyling. She dressed you in Oilers colors?
She didn't realize it either. Do you think I argue with Deb Berman?
No,
if she
no one
told me to
does. No
wear,
one should.
If she told me to wear a toga, I'd wear a toga. So she gave me this, and I don't think we realized it.
We get to a game 7 in the Cup final. You're going toga. You're going Belushi style. Okay, I have a job for you. I've just discovered as you're running down the Dallas Stars jerseys you saw in the crowd. I have a job for you for the next podcast. I want you game 2 Saturday night to find the most obscure Dallas Stars jersey in the crowd.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
I want you to have like a quick little peek, hunt around, take a couple of pictures if you have to, find the most obscure Dallas Stars name. That is my job for you. Game 2, Elliotte, Saturday. Hockey night in Canada. Can't wait for this one. Game 1 was a beauty. Okay, as we like to say, news on the march, Elliotte. Let's get to a news segment a little bit later on. We will talk about the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers. But time for, as we call it, the latest. And the latest involves the general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, Don Waddell, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Elliotte, what do you hear? What do you know?
So I was working on this all day, and Pierre LeBrun, to his credit and my great consternation, got it out before I did that Waddell had permission to talk to other teams. There's a couple of things to note here. This is not unusual behavior by the Hurricanes. Waddell's in the last year of his contract. You'll remember when Dougie Hamilton was an unrestricted free agent, they allowed him to talk to teams well before July 1st because they knew they weren't going to re-sign him for what he wanted, and they just said, you're free to talk to other people. So this is standard procedure for the Hurricanes. Now, one Hurricane fan I know whose work I really like is Corey Schneider, whose Twitter handle is Shutdown Line, and he made a very fair point that this has kind of happened with Waddell and the Hurricanes before, where they weren't sure he was going to come back, and he's met with other teams. It happened with Minnesota a few years ago before they hired Bill Guerin, and he was kind of thinking, is this kind of thing again, or is it more serious? And I'll say this. I believe this is different. I believe this is more serious. I believe there is a very good chance that Waddell will not be back with the Hurricanes. And the reason I believe that is because I'm hearing that the organization is sending out signals that they will have a GM search. In the past, it was always like, we'll see what happens. He might be back. This feels different. Now, maybe that'll change, but it's definitely more of a level I've heard in the past that Waddell could be leaving. Now, as I reported, he interviewed in Columbus on Thursday. He wouldn't confirm that. The Blue Jackets wouldn't confirm that. But enough people seem to know about it that it happened. And I do think he's a legitimate contender there. And one of the reasons I think he's a legitimate contender is because Columbus is looking for somebody with experience. He certainly has it. Columbus is looking for potentially a top hockey person, which he's been. And also, I think they could be making business hires too. And Waddell is a very sharp businessman. So, I don't know exactly what this is going to end up being if he ends up there, because we're still waiting on the possibility the Blue Jackets could talk to other people. But I do believe he's a serious contender for a job there, a big job there, and I think the Hurricanes know it. So I think the Hurricanes are preparing to do either a search. Like, to me, they should just promote Eric Tulsky. He's a big decision maker there anyway. And, I think everybody knows how the Hurricanes work internally. Waddell had the GM position there, but everybody knows that Tulsky has a big influence on the decisions they make, and Tom Dundon really trusts him. So to me, it seems obvious, and I'd wonder who, now recognizing there's only 32 of these jobs available and they are coveted, I wonder how some people would feel like if Eric Tulsky's there and everybody knows he has a big voice, why would you bring in somebody over top of him? But I've heard at the very least, the Hurricanes are considering doing an external search. I don't know how this is all going to end, but it's definite to me that the Hurricanes are preparing for a new regime.
To me, it would make the most sense to give him that position. He's been there a long time. He understands how the organization works. I don't think many, if any, moves get made without him at least weighing in on it. One thing to remember, too, he's already interviewed and gone deep in the process for both the Chicago general manager job that went to Kyle Davidson and the Pittsburgh Penguins job, which inevitably went to Kyle Dubas. So eyes on that situation very much.
I would also say this, Jeff, and I was talking about this with someone from another organization on Thursday, is that if Dundon values Tulsky, and I believe he does he worry that he will upset Tulsky if he doesn't promote him?
I don't know. I don't know that it would for Eric Tulsky, but I could see that. I could definitely see that.
I think human nature, I think I can't speak for Tulsky. I don't know him well enough to speak for him, but human nature being what it is, I know a lot of people who would be upset by that.
Okay, this concludes the Walkcast part of the podcast. What you're about to hear next is the remainder of the news segment. We recorded this earlier on Thursday afternoon. Enjoy. We're all wondering as well what the changes are going to be on the ice for the Carolina Hurricanes. One of the players who is a restricted free agent, has arbitration rights, Martin Necas. I think we wonder about his future. You've talked about him probably being in another market next season. Could there be a fit in Boston there?
Are you talking about an Ullmark move or something like that?
Goalie for winger, sir. Goalie for winger.
So I can't remember what we said after the deadline, although I'm pretty sure we talked about it. Ullmark there was something going on with the Bruins and another Eastern Conference team, a contender, about Ullmark. And I can't remember what we said exactly, so it's really good to dive into the shallow end here without remembering what we discussed.
Very responsible of us, yes.
But I do believe the Bruins and the Hurricanes talked about an Ullmark deal. Now, I don't know if it involved Necas, but I do think they talked about something. And I can't remember if we specifically mentioned the Bruins at the time or not, but we definitely talked about something with Ullmark and an Eastern Conference team. Now, number one, it has to be recognized that Ullmark would have to be able to go there. So that, and I don't know where Carolina is or is not on his list, but I do believe it's something these two teams talked about. You know, the whole Necas thing, you know, Don Waddell poured a little bit of cold water on it at the season-ending media conference, but this is why I don't let my family do interviews, because I'm afraid of what they all say. Necas' dad went out in a Czech interview and basically said, yeah, it's time, which is something that I think a few people have suspected for a while. I do think it's likely he gets moved. I just think that him and the Hurricanes don't see each other in the same value, but we'll see how it all works out. I mean, on paper, that makes sense to me, Jeff, but just talking on paper, I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be looking at Necas and trying to find out what he wants, and he's a good player, and, you know, Carolina's going to have some options here. I did have someone say to me that they were willing to bet me a nice steak dinner that there's no way that Carolina buys out Kotkaniemi. They think that they've got a player there, and they've just got to figure out how to make it work. But, you know, we'll see. We brought it up in the last pod. We'll see where it goes. Jeff, one more thing about Necas.
Yep.
Do you remember when all that Pettersson drama hit about whether he was going to sign and not sign, and Vancouver talked with Carolina?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. That was, that was an interesting time, Elliotte.
So Necas was in that deal.
Yep.
Okay. And Pettersson, in our interview with him, said he never thought he was going to get dealt. But Necas was in that deal. And I just wonder if there's something there still. If one of the ways that Vancouver and, you know, if Necas is going to be moved, and it's not for Pettersson, obviously. Let's not go down that road. It's not for Pettersson. But I wonder if there's a Necas deal to be made there. With Vancouver. Like, let's just say like Carolina's got a lot of D that they need to sign. Like, you know, what if they look at someone like Roenick as making more sense for them? Like, that's the kind of thing I'm wondering about now. And Jeff, I had someone who bet me a steak dinner. They heard us talking about Kotkaniemi and a buyout. And he said to me, Elliotte, I will bet you a delicious steak dinner that Kotkaniemi does not get bought out because the Hurricanes as an organization like him. And he said, you know what? Other organizations do too. And the Canucks might be one of them. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. But there'll be a lot to talk about, that's for sure.
Okay, since we mentioned Linus Ullmark a couple of seconds ago, Ellie, let's transition to Boston. And all the heavyweights were out there, front and center. It's pretty clear the message is, first, everyone's staying. And second of all, they're going to be aggressive trying to change up this team.
Yeah, we talked about Boston a lot, but just a couple things I wanted to address after that media conference. I don't think it's a surprise that everyone's staying there. Boston overachieved based on what a lot of us expected this season. They might not have been overly satisfied with losing in the second round, but I don't know too many people who picked them to go there. In the last podcast we talked about Elias Lindholm and how he's a player they liked before he got traded to Vancouver. So I'm expecting them to be in on him if he hits the market. Someone else said to me, throw Chandler Stevenson's name in there. I think there's a lot of people expecting that Stevenson will be on Boston's radar. People definitely believe Boston's going to get a center. When the Bruins say they're going to do something, they tend to do it, and they tend to attract good players to them because they're generally a very well-run organization. So I think there's, whether it's Lindholm or Stevenson or somebody we're missing right now, there's definitely a belief Boston is going to do something here down the middle, as they have promised. Now,
right.
Lindholm. Let's tie this into Vancouver. We talk again. I don't want to go too much into Vancouver because we talked about them at length on Monday, but Lindholm, there was a pretty funny interaction between Lindholm and JT Miller when Lindholm was asked about it, and he played it smart. He wasn't pouring any gasoline on the fire. He said, I really haven't thought about it. And Miller kind of made a joke about, I'd like to hear what you have to say here, and I think be specific.
It's no secret that you're a free agent heading into the summer here. What are you looking for in a deal, and did you have enough fun to return to Vancouver?
Be really specific. Yeah. Years and salary.
And Miller had that line, be specific, which I thought was pretty good. I have heard there's been a bit of a full court press by, I don't know if it's one Canuck player or a couple on Lindholm. What's it going to take to keep you here, Elias? So I think the Canuck players, look, there's a lot of choices they're going to have to make there. And it was very clear from the end of season media conference that those guys really like playing with each other, which is always a good sign. But I do think a couple of guys have tried to sell Lindholm on trying to find a way to make it work. They saw his value in the postseason. Sure. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Like Zadorov was pretty funny. I think he's planning on going touring with Shane Gillis this summer. And Zadorov opening for Shane Gillis, the way he's going in these media conferences now, joking
that
about
was great.
The Edmonton media.
That was great.
It's really funny. Like, one of the things I've learned about all these kinds of media conferences, when you have a team like Vancouver that had a really good year, so you're talking 48 hours after a really emotional defeat to end your year, and everybody loves playing with everybody else, and they look at each other and they say, boy, I really love playing with this group, and I really love playing with these guys. And as I've always said, in a Canadian city, the risks are high, but the rewards are high. And those players are seeing the rewards right now about how good it is to be in Vancouver when you're a good team. And they're all sitting there saying, oh, I'd like to find a way to make it work, and I'd love to stay. And they do mean it. Like, they're not lying. They'd love to make it work. But then the agents get involved. They're like, hey, okay, we've got to think about the business here. That's what my job is, to take the emotion out of it and think about the business. And they'll present options. Like, they'll say, hey, well, this is what we can do to stay. But you have to be aware about, these are the options you're going to have out here. And this is what you can get. And this is what you are going to be leaving on the table. Like, Jeff, I remember years ago, remember Sandy Alomar, the catcher from Cleveland?
Of course. Yeah.
So yeah. I was in a scrum once when Cleveland came to play Toronto, and he was talking about re-signing with the team. And, he said he fired his agent, who kept on telling him, you can sign for more, you can sign for more, you can sign for more elsewhere. Yeah. And I said to him, like, out of curiosity, like, isn't that his job to warn you about that kind of thing? And he said yes, but he wouldn't shut up about it. And finally I just said enough, because I wanted to stay. But that's what the agent's job is then now. So we're gonna go from the emotion of it to the business of it here.
Well, you'll notice the first thing that Lindholm did was he said, well, I'm going to talk to my agent. Like, right away, it was defer to the agent. Stop asking me questions. And you, JT Miller, you be quiet too. Thatcher Demko, stop laughing. No, it was fun.
I would bet
good.
Miller is one of the guys saying to Lindholm, "Hey, what's it going to take here?" Yeah, I bet.
But why
that's
not?
An easy guy to say no to.
But why not? Like, they just had a wonderful season. Like, Rick Tocchet, their head coach, just won the Jack Adams, and Patrick Allvin is up for GM of the year. And they made it deep into the second round, got to a game 7. The market was energized again. Like, it's been like, just think about what someone like JT Miller has gone through in Vancouver. And to come out right now, like, how would he not want to keep the band together? Like, that's what I always think of. Like, the players that went through the really, really lean, dark years and were almost jettisoned themselves. Like, once they get a taste of success, they want to keep everybody together. So would it surprise me at all if JT Miller was leading the charge to keep everyone together? No, not for a second. But then think about where he's been with this team. Totally makes sense. Yep. Totally makes sense.
I thought it was interesting how some of those guys refused to point out their injuries. You know, Roenick, it's been suspected that there's some sort of elbow thing. He was like, no. I mean, he just hates talking to us anyway, so I'm not hugely surprised. But Ian Cole, you know, there was another guy, you know, like that guy played his heart out for them this year, was a really good player, had a really tough playoff, would have been very easy for him to blame the injuries. Nope. I really respected that about Cole in that situation. Pettersson was very interesting because, you know, he said something, he talked about this being quite a year. And we talked about it in the last pod, and I do believe it. I think this summer, when he doesn't have to think about the contract, when he doesn't have to think about anything else, he can just burn some incense and relax. I think he'll come back in a much better place next year. You know, it's interesting. He talked about the injury, but, you know, clearly Tocchet felt there was more to give there. But again, you know, they'll go away this summer, and I think he's going to be in the long run so much better off for it. And same for Hughes. The challenge will be this year, you know, Vancouver's got the tent poles. They've got a Norris Trophy winning defenseman who's going to get I believe is going to get the trophy in June in Vegas. They've got Pettersson signed. They've got Miller signed. You know, like you're starting there. Well, Demko's got a couple more years, but you're starting there. You've got your tent poles built. And now they know they've got to figure out what to do around them. And this year, they made several moves, and a lot of them really worked. So, like I said, I think they're going to take a run at Lindholm and see what they can do. And I think they're going to take a run at Zadorov, and they're going to see what they can do. And then they're going to sit out there and say, okay, what else do we need to do around this?
Okay. Mentioned Rick Tocchet winning the Jack Adams. Congratulations there.
Yep.
483 points. Andrew Burnett, second, 145. This thing, Elliotte, was never in doubt for Tocchet.
Well, it's always in doubt because you never know who people are going to vote for. And because I'm not a member of the Broadcasters Association, I really don't know what a lot of the people there think. But as you said, it ended up being lopsided, and I think he's very deserving. He had a great year. You know, he talked about, I watched his interview with Ron that he did after it was announced, and one of the things that some people there in Vancouver told me was one of the things that Tocchet mentioned is that he used to get really upset with mistakes on the bench, and the players could really see it. And that is when people who've played for Tocchet say they hear that the biggest thing about him that's changed is that he's not like that anymore, or not like that as much. You know, he's much calmer. He doesn't get mad at players on the bench. I think that having a good staff around him has really helped him with that too. But that's one of the biggest changes he made, is that he much calmer on the bench. Just in terms of when players make mistakes. And we all evolve, right? We all have to get better. And he did at that. And, you know, he was very deserving. He built a structure there. You know, guys had a really good year there. It's going to be really interesting to see. You know, he's in year 2 of 4. I'm going to be curious to say, I mean, obviously, you know, you could see if Tocchet wants it, you know, he could be with Vancouver for a long, long time. A long, long time. I think that's one of the reasons that Jeremy Colleton is also looking around because sometimes the AHL coach, you kind of wonder, okay, am I the next guy here? Well, if you're in Vancouver right now, you're looking at Rick Tocchet and you're saying that guy isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Patrick Allvin, one of the 3 nominees for the Jim Gregory Award, the General Manager of the Year, alongside Jim Nill and Bill Zito. So more Vancouver Canucks names attached to hardware, Elliot. How do you handicap this one?
I think all very deserving. I don't have any issue with any of the 3. I will say this. I think that Allvin is interesting because, like, I had a vote, and I won't say at this time where I went with. And one of the things that I looked at in this particular case is it's not that Allvin is incapable. I think he's proven to be very capable. It's just that he's not necessarily the main decision maker in the organization, right? So, that was one of the things I talked about as I was compiling information is, Jim Nill, he's the main decision maker in his organization. Bill Zito, he's the main decision maker in his organization. Technically, Jim Rutherford is above Allvin in the organization. And not that Allvin, like I said, it's not like he's incapable, but it's just that it was a challenge for me to say, okay, like, should Allvin be on the ballot when he's technically not the number 1 decision maker in the organization? But obviously he got there, so enough people felt he did.
A few more things. Some coaching news. Sheldon Keefe, the New Jersey Devils, making it official. There'll be a press conference next Tuesday. He is the new head coach of the New Jersey Devils. Thoughts on this one?
Not surprised. I think the biggest question was going to be, would he take it? I think, once he was available, I think New Jersey, well, Fitzgerald kind of said it in his statement that they were very interested, and he jumped to the top of their process. The biggest question was if Keefe was going to take it. He has a son who's a really good player, and he had indicated, I think, to quite a few people that he might just decide to take the year and watch his son play. Like, we all want to be great parents, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't blame anyone who has the ability to do that from doing it. Like, if I could take some time and do that and be around my son a lot more, I mean, I don't know how he'd vote. He might say, "Daddy, go away," but yeah. I like doing it. So I totally would have understood if that was his decision. We'll hear what he has to say on Tuesday, but my sense is that, number one, I think you always were, there's only so many of these jobs available, and if you pass them up, then you worry that maybe things will pass you by. And that doesn't always happen, but it can happen. So I think that was part of it. But number 2, and I've said this, I think people see New Jersey as possibly the best job that was available. And, as you take a look at them, they have good young players. Keefe is definitely used to good young players. 2 years ago, they were a second-round team. They had some weaknesses this year that they know they've got to fix. And the other thing about it is, and a couple of people said this to me, David Blitzer, who owns the Devils, is now on the NHL Executive Committee. You're not on, that committee if, the NHL thinks you're a bad owner or you don't run the kind of organization that people want. Mm-hmm. So that says to me, like one coach once told me that there are owners that you can win with and owners that you worry you can't win with. I think Blitzer running the Devils, people see him as an owner they think they can win with. So that would be another thing that I think would really appeal to Keefe. He's going to an organization that people believe has a chance to win. And I think that would have played a huge factor in his decision. And like I've said to you many times, I don't believe Sheldon, and Brad Treliving kind of talked about this at Berube's media conference. Sheldon Keefe wasn't fired because he was a bad coach. Sheldon Keefe was fired because they couldn't run it back. They could not come back under the same combination in Toronto. That's why he was fired, not because he's a bad coach. And I'll tell you, like, those Toronto Jersey games, they'll have a little bit of edge to them.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
those games will be really, really fun. And Keefe will challenge those players. And I think it's going to be good for everyone there.
Are you already hyping up a Curtis McDermott, Ryan Reeves encounter, Elliotte? Is that what I'm to read into this one?
I don't even think it's going to be that so much. I just think that Keefe's going to want to stick it to him, and they're going to want to stick it to him. It's fantastic.
The thing about Keefe and the New Jersey Devils, I was making this point on the radio show on Thursday, is New Jersey is one of the teams that prides themselves on being, to be blunt, a really smart organization. And it's a very information-based organization, an information-based team. And the one thing that I think we all know by now about Sheldon Keefe, and I first saw this when he was coaching with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, and they had someone from either business ops or who ran the ticketing for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds go on the road with the Greyhounds and would count things like zone entries and where shots came from, like really, really basic, like very prime raw analytic data, because there wasn't any sort of sophisticated technology for it in the OHL at that point. And that's what Sheldon Keefe wanted in order to prepare himself. And the one thing that we know about Sheldon Keefe is he's one of the most prepared coaches in the NHL, which is why I kind of look at this situation and say, Sheldon Keefe's never going to be the coach that says, okay, this is too much information, I'm overloaded. If anything, it's the opposites. Like, he will gobble up all of this from the analytics department and spit it back out to the players and form strategy around it. That's why I look at this one and say, this one's a really good fit. Speaking of coaches, Jim Hiller, Los Angeles, interim tag removed, as we've discussed here for the past few weeks.
Yeah, so it's good to see that one thing that we predicted and said that was going to happen it actually came true. That is the one this year for the podcast. Congrats. So nothing else that we say
Take a bow, everybody. Come true. Take a bow, everyone. Well done.
Nothing else is going to come true. So a 3-year deal with the chance for the fourth to be guaranteed. Rob Blake said that. I thought it was a very interesting media conference. You know, Rob Blake was one of my favorite players when he played, and he did not get enough credit, I think, for how mean he was.
Ask anyone he hit, Elliotte, how mean he was.
Yes, but he was such a nice person to deal with that it just,
not on the ice.
But not on the ice.
No.
I went back, so I'm here in Dallas, so I was at the morning skate for Dallas Edmonton, but I went after and I watched the Colorado press conference, which I know we're going to talk about. And then I also went and I watched the LA media conference later. And you could really tell that Blake he thought his team was too easy to play against. He really did. And I know all year long there was a lot of talk about Englund, the defenseman, continually being in the lineup. And the reason I felt he was there was because he was one of the few mean Kings. And if they didn't have him, they really didn't have anything. And I could tell watching Blake talk, it really bothered him that he thought his team got pushed around too easily. And so we'll see where that goes. I would expect them to address that. Laferriere, I should mention too, for the Kings, because I think he was a guy who really made an impact trying to be a little nasty for them and was very good at times. And I wanted to shout him out too, but they didn't have a lot of that. So that's one thing I think will change. Hiller, a couple of things about him. First of all, I do think they're going to change the way they play. I really believe Blake wanted to hear what Hiller had to say about it first. I think he has a lot of ideas. One of the challenges is, LA, West Coast, lots of travel, not a lot of practice time. They really couldn't change much. Now I think they're going to. And so that's number one. Number two, I heard a couple of really interesting things about Hiller that I think the Kings liked about him. Number one, they liked his practices. I never really got to see any of them, but I heard when they did practice, they really liked the way he coaches practice. So I thought that was very interesting. And secondly, I heard that he, behind closed doors, like Berube just came in and talked about how and everybody knows how tough he can be behind closed doors. I heard Hiller behind closed doors is a lot tougher than we kind of realize. He keeps it out of the public, but someone said to me that there was a little bit of surprise there, because when you move from assistant to head on the same team, you go from good cop to bad cop, and that's not easy.
Oh, yes.
I heard that there was a bit of surprise about how well he could do it, but he did it, he said, honest things in a blunt but fair way. So I was really curious about that. And they said that, they said he said some tough things to important players, and it was noticed. So, and there's definitely, like I said, there's definitely a feeling Blake felt that they need more of that.
All right. You mentioned the Colorado press conference. I want to get your thoughts on this one. Gabriel Landeskog, Chris McFarland as well, commenting on Landeskog's future. Landeskog said he is not retiring. I know that was a question as soon as we saw the announcement that there was going to be a press conference. And it's kind of the first place your brain goes sometimes. And talked about the challenges in his rehab and trying to come back. Also some interesting comments about the future, if there is one, for Valeri Nichushkin and the Avalanche, Elliotte.
Yeah, so they got the Landeskog thing out right away, and I'm glad to hear he's still going to try. I think the organization is loyal to him, and obviously he's loyal to them, and in a perfect world, he'll come back. Everything I've heard about this injury is that people are impressed he's even tried this long. It's a pretty serious injury. It's a pretty tough surgery to recover from. And, there are a lot of people in this league who play hurt, Jeff, but at least they can get in the lineup to play hurt. Like I remember with Shea Weber in Montreal, how many Habs players were like, I cannot believe what this guy is going through to even play. But he was playing. But I think there are a lot of players, and not to say that they're weak or anything, because I don't think they are, but they would have given up long before Landeskog has. And I just respect that about him, that he wants to continue to try. It just shows you how these players, they just love hockey. And so I'm happy that he's at least continuing to try, because that's obviously what he wants to do. Nichushkin, they said it's very plausible he's back. He confirmed what we'd reported, which is that there's no grounds to terminate him right now. The one thing that someone said to me about this situation is that it's fluid, because, when you're in the program at this level, you have to make sure you stay on a proper path. Someone from another team told me that that's one of the things that becomes very important right now, is that the player has to stay on the path, or else that can change. Mm-hmm. But I think it's pretty clear here that the Avalanche are looking at it from the two ways you have to look at it. There's the disappointment of he couldn't play, but there's the person. And, obviously they want the person to do well, but they want to know, obviously they want the person to do well. That's the most important thing. But they also want to know from the business and hockey point of view, is he going to be dependable? And we're just not going to have that answer in the short term. So I think one of the biggest things that the Avalanche have to decide is, how are they going to approach the summer? And that is, do they go over the cap in the summer? Do they deal with the overages in the season next year? Like, do you just wait to see, can Landeskog play at the beginning of the year? You don't have to. Nichushkin is out of the lineup until November. So you just say, okay, we'll do what we need to do, and we'll deal with anything we have to deal with in terms of the salary cap when Nichushkin is available, when Landeskog is available? Or do we plan for the summer as if we're going to have them both and we have to be careful? And, I think that's kind of what they have to decide. They have some contracts they have to get done. We mentioned Rantanen. The Drouin thing is really interesting to me because I think there's a real sense there is a deal to be made there just because he's in a situation where he's happy. But you have to sit down, you have to figure out what everybody wants, and you have to work from there. But I know, like, one of my friends who's an Avalanche fan, he came out of that, he watched that media conference, and he's like, I don't think they're going to be able to afford Drouin to stay. And my reaction to that is I just think that Jonathan Drouin has to know how good this was, and the Avalanche have to know how good this was. And I really believe that there's got to be a path there. And I do believe there's a path there as long as both sides can work together.
I mean, he has to know, Drouin does, how many people, most notably Nathan McKinnon, stuck their neck out to give him this chance. Now, he made the most of it, full marks for that as well. But, I mean, rewind to last summer. There wasn't a whole lot of people screaming about, you need to sign Jonathan Drouin. Like, Colorado believed in him, gave him this chance. Again, he made the most of it. But this was Colorado really giving this guy another opportunity. And some would say maybe his last opportunity.
I agree, Jeff, and I'm glad it worked out so well.
Yeah, you and me both. Okay, that's the news. Quick pause. We come back. Rangers, Panthers up for grabs to finish off the podcast. Listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Welcome back to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by the GMC Sierra Elevation. Elliott, later on tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, we can see Game 2. You can watch it on Sportsnet. It's a Hockey Night in Canada presentation. It is the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers. Panthers, should I say won Game 1 handily? Maybe played a smart road game? Were able to keep the New York Rangers from having any significant energy bursts, except that time that Jacob Trouba caught Kevin Stenlett and the place went crazy. Or Sergei Bobrovsky outdueled Igor Shesterkin. How do you want to describe Game 1 in advance of Game 2 tonight?
I just thought the Panthers were excellent. They really smothered New York. And in the moments where they let the Rangers gain some momentum, Bobrovsky was there to clean up the mess. There were some great chances. There were a couple breakaways. There was the one opportunity where they had 2 or 3 chances, but Bobrovsky was excellent. He outdueled Shesterkin in this one. Someone said to me it was really a 1-0 game. The Lafreniere knocked the puck into his own net, and then there was an empty netter. There was really only one goal of consequence. And Shesterkin, he'd probably want that one back. So this was a game where Bobrovsky outdueled Shesterkin, and that was one reason the Panthers won. But I just thought they were in control for most of the game. They played a technically perfect game most of the night. Their forecheck, what do the Panthers do? They forecheck you into oblivion, and they did that most of the night. And Matthew Tkachuk, who doesn't make as many signature plays maybe as he used to, he has embraced the grind. He grinds you every single night. One thing I'll say about Tkachuk is the players who were critical of him, or people who were critical of him, said he would have big-time highlight plays, whether it was a goal or a hit or whatever he would do, but he wasn't always consistent. And the biggest criticism came in that playoff series the Flames lost to the Oilers a couple years ago. Now, I think he just grinds it and brings it every single night. Like, he doesn't have the highlight plays, maybe as many, and he still can because he's that good. But I just think he consistently wears you down. And the game the other night, I thought, was a perfect example of it.
Elliot, I think that whole team just wears you down. Like, isn't that the Florida Panthers? Like, they just chisel.
Yes, well, at the end of the game, when Mikkola hit Hedl, wasn't that just such a Florida Panthers play?
Okay, I'm glad you got there early, because to me it wasn't just that hit, but right before that, Ryan Lomberg is running around. And
yes, he was.
No one's stopping him. And then Hedl, and there's only like 3 seconds left in the game, right? So if you're Nico Mikkola on that play, you might say to yourself, there's 3 seconds left here, whatever, we're up 3-0. This game is over. But to me, that's the message, that we are going to play hard right until the final buzzer. And Mikkola hammers him into the boards. And we all know about the injury and specifically concussion history with Filip Chytil. Did you notice what Mikkola did as soon as he hit Chytil? So he hits him like he's a smudge into the boards. And Mikkola stands up and turns to look at the Rangers to see who's coming. In his mind, someone's coming. And nobody does. No one. The buzzer goes and he skates to Bobrovsky. But I thought that was so interesting. If you go back and watch the hit, he hammers Chytil, turns around to face the play behind him, expecting someone to be there, and no one was there. Now,
because if he was playing against the Panthers, he knows that 10 guys would be coming after him.
Exactly. Or if he's playing against Tampa, there'd be like guys swarming him all over.
Yes, but that's true too. They would be also.
I thought it was really interesting, and he caught himself and said, "Well, I'm not trying to second guess the coach here," when really you are, or I'm not trying to tell the coach what to do here, but you are. When Mark Messier in the intermission said something along the lines of, wondering about or speculating on, or however he phrased it, seeing Matt Rempe in Game 2. That's coming from Mark Messier.
Well,
about Matt
remember,
Rempe in Game 2.
I mean, Messier, I have to say, when I watch Messier on TV, he is consistent with himself. He still believes that matters. Remember when he hated the one cross-check penalty in the last round? He said, that's not really a cross-check. Like Messier believes in a certain code, and that hasn't changed. Not at all. He is true to himself. Now, Jeff, as you can imagine, the whole Rempe debate has led to some complete craziness on social media. I said before the series, and I'll say it again, I think there is a role for him in this series, and not just as somebody who's there to fight people, but I just think that you need, against a team like Florida, you need people who can grind like he can grind. That is, I don't think you're dressing him as a sideshow, and I don't think the Rangers would do that anyway. I think you're putting him in there because you think that he has a role to play in the flow of the game. And I would bet you that the Rangers are at the very least considering it. The other guy I still wonder about here too is Wheeler. Wheeler's not a speedster, but he knows how to play a down low kind of cycle game. And I just wonder, too, if they give him a shot. But, it's early. It's game one. They need a spark. Like I said, they had some short bursts, but I never really felt the Panthers were threatened. I thought for the most part, the Panthers really controlled that game. And like I said, Bobrovsky outdueled Shesterkin. But that one's going to swing the other way at points, too.
There was, though, that one moment, and this is where the conversation, this is for the pro Rempe camp. There was that one, like the best cluster of action that the Rangers had was after Jacob Trouba flattened Kevin Stenlund. And the place went crazy. Fans went nuts. It was like an instant jolt of energy to the Rangers. Marched down the ice, had a bunch of shots at Sergei Bobrovsky. Florida's running around. They're confused, and they end up taking a too many men on the ice penalty because of it. Just because it started with that Jacob Trouba hit. And then all of a sudden, bam, the Rangers are on. It was like, Undertaker rising. Right. It was like, it was like, you suddenly turn into the Incredible Hulk. It was amazing. And that's where I go to. I mean, that rink at times was pretty quiet, and that shouldn't be MSG. Yep. And the Rangers were pretty quiet, and that's not the New York Rangers. And I'm with you. Like, you don't dress him to be a sideshow, but you dress him because every time he's on the ice, like even just his presence to those fans creates an energy in the arena. Like, it's one of the weirdest things in the NHL. Make no mistake about it. People, like Rangers fans, go nuts for this guy. The minute he touches the ice, there's a buzz and there's an energy. That's where I see Matt Rempe being really valuable, because what's the one thing that the Rangers didn't create in game one? energy and bursts, energy bursts. They didn't create that. I just wonder if Laviolette is saying to himself, we need that. We need that spark that we got from Trouba on Stanlund. Rempe gives us that spark. That's what I wonder about.
I think that's all very fair.
The other thing that I want to get to with you here in this game, and you've talked about this before, we've opined on it, and right away I got the tweets about it, and I'm sure you did as well. On the goalie interference call on the Oliver Ekman-Larsson goal, which was called back on goalie interference, Ryan Lomberg goes in the crease.
I thought that was an easy call.
It was?
An easy call, yes.
The thing about it was Dan O'Rourke took the extra time to explain why that call was made. He just didn't say, upon further review, we determined there was goaltender interference, no goal. He stood there and explained how Ryan Lomberg went in the crease, etc. He took like the extra 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds and explained it. And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is what we've been talking about. Whether you like the call or not, that's fine, but at least explain how you got there so fans can understand. I know you're with us on this one, Elliotte. That was great by Dan O'Rourke.
I'm completely with you, 100%. 100%. Explain what happened. But to me, when I saw that play, Lomberg goes right into the crease.
Oh, yeah.
That was an obvious one for me. Obvious.
Yeah. The only question was going to be, did Shesterkin have enough time to reset? Obviously, the answer is no, but you're right. He goes right in the crease. Okay, you can watch Game 2 tonight. Florida Panthers lead the series 1-0. Game 2 at MSG this evening. It is the Panthers. It is the Rangers. Puck drops just after 8 o'clock. Enjoy it. The podcast returns Monday morning. Enjoy the entire weekend's worth of action. We'll talk to you again Monday morning.